Story 1, Medieval Taverns and Tangles. Chapter 1, The Alehouse Ambiance. Hey, everybody! Welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're stepping into the smoky, rowdy world of medieval taverns, where ale flowed, gossip simmered, and romantic tangles sparked in the flicker of torchlight. Picture wooden benches, spilled drinks, and secrets whispered over mugs. Before we dive in, smash that like button if you're ready for some medieval drama, and subscribe if you love these deep dives. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm always stoked to see our global crew. Grab a drink, maybe a snack, and let's stumble into the tavern together. When you think of a medieval tavern, you might imagine a cozy pub with a jolly innkeeper and a crackling fire. Well, sort of. Taverns were the social hubs of the Middle Ages, but they were more like dive bars than Instagram-worthy gastropubs. These were places where peasants, merchants, and even the occasional knight gathered to drink, disse, and dish the dirt. From village alehouses to city inns, taverns were where life got messy, and romance found a niche in the chaos of clinking mugs and slurred songs. Let's set the scene. A typical tavern was a cramped, dimly lit room with rough wooden tables and benches worn smooth by years of use. The floor was packed dirt or straw, soaked with spilled ale and the odd chicken feather. A hearth smoked up the place, mixing with the smell of sour beer. Sweat and whatever stew was simmering. Barrels lined the walls, and the tavern keeper, often a sharp-tongued woman, kept the ale flowing. Torchlight cast flickering shadows, making every glance feel like a secret. It was loud, raw, and perfect for stirring up trouble or love. The crowd was a mixed bag. Peasants came to unwind after a day in the fields, swapping stories and insults. Merchants stopped by to haggle over deals, their purses jingling. Travelers, from pilgrims to peddlers, added spice with tales of far-off places. Even nobles, slumming it, might show up, cloaked to avoid attention. Ale was the great equalizer. Everyone drank it, from watery small beer to head-spinning brews. Wine was for the rich, but in a tavern, it was ale or nothing. A few rounds in, tongues loosened, and flirtations started, whether anyone meant them to or not. Now, let's talk romance. Taverns were prime spots for sparks to fly, because they were one of the few places where people could mingle freely. If you had a crush, you'd head to the alehouse, hoping they'd show up. A peasant girl might linger by the hearth, pretending to warm her hands while eyeing the blacksmith's apprentice. A guy could offer to buy a round, flexing his coin to impress his sweetheart. These were bold moves in a world where most interactions were scripted by family or work. The tavern's buzz gave you cover to flirt, as long as you didn't get too obvious. The church, of course, had a lot to say. Taverns were dens of sin gluttony, gambling, and worse. They worried about drunkenness leading to unchaste behavior, and priests often railed against alehouses in sermons. Some towns even had curfews to clear out rowdy drinkers. But enforcing rules in a tavern was like herding cats. The keeper might nod at the priest, then pour another round. Couples used the chaos to their advantage. slipping into a shadowy corner, or stepping outside for a quick chat. The church's glare was there, but the ale dulled its sting. Flirting had its own tavern code. Sharing a mug was a classic move, intimate, but not too forward. A girl might laugh extra loud at a guy's joke, signaling interest. A man could toss a coin to the fiddler, dedicating a tune to a fair lass, leaving everyone guessing. Dicing or card games were another trick. Losing a bet could mean a playful dare, like a dance or a whispered word. These were small gestures, but in a village where gossip traveled fast, they were risky. A misplaced wink could spark a rumor or a brawl if someone felt slighted. Taverns weren't just for locals. Travelers brought fresh faces, making them a hot spot for fleeting romances. A pilgrim might charm a barmaid with tales of holy shrines, while a merchant could dazzle a villager with a silk ribbon. These flings were thrilling, but dangerous strangers left as fast as they came, and a broken heart was hard to hide in a small town. Still, the tavern's magic kept people coming back, hoping for a connection in the smoky haze. Let's bust a myth. Taverns weren't all debauchery. Sure, they were rough, but they were also where communities clicked. Flirtations, fights, and friendships brewed in equal measure, making taverns a pulse of medieval life. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how these alehouse sparks turned into courtships, and the risks that came with them. Stick around. It's about to get juicy. Story 1. Medieval Taverns and Tangles. Chapter 2. From Flirt to Fiasco. Hey, friends. We're back for Chapter 2 of our story about medieval taverns and the romantic tangles that brewed in their smoky corners. If you missed Chapter 1, go check it out. We set the scene with the rowdy, ale-soaked vibe of alehouse life. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment with your location and time. Let's pick up where we left off and talk about how those tavern flirtations turned into serious courtships or spectacular disasters in a world of mugs, music, and meddling priests. Taverns were medieval matchmakers, where a shared mug could spark a romance. But turning a flirtation into a courtship was like navigating a maze blindfolded. In the Middle Ages, love was tangled up with family, faith, and survival, and tavern-born sparks had to dodge a lot of obstacles. Whether you were a peasant chasing a sweetheart or a traveler testing your luck, the alehouse was where dreams started. But keeping them alive took guts, guile, and a bit of sober planning. Let's start with the peasants. A tavern was one of the few places where young folks could mingle without parents hovering. Picture a village alehouse on a Saturday night. A girl and a guy hit it off over a dice game, trading laughs and glances. They start meeting there regularly, sharing drinks or dancing to a fiddler's tune. That's the spark. But courtship meant getting serious. The guy might visit her family, offering to mend a fence to win her dad over. The girl could bake him a small loaf, a subtle sign she's interested. These were slow moves, because rushing could spark gossip or a family veto. The church was always lurking. Taverns were supposed to be for fellowship, not flirting. And priests kept a sharp eye on alehouse antics. A couple laughing too loudly might catch a cleric's glare, and anything bolder like a stolen kiss could mean trouble. Some towns had moral watchmen who'd report sinners to the church court. Penalties ranged from a lecture to a fine, or even public shaming if you really pushed it. But taverns were chaotic, and clever couples used the noise to their advantage, slipping into a corner or stepping outside while the keeper distracted the priest with a free mug. Gossip was the real tavern hazard. Villages were like live-streamed drama. Everyone knew your business. A girl seen sharing a drink with a guy might be labeled trouble, hurting her marriage prospects. A guy who flirted with the wrong person could spark a brawl with a rival, especially after a few ales. To avoid trouble, couples used coded signals. A girl might tie a ribbon to her mug, signaling she's open to chat. A guy could dedicate a song to a friend, testing the waters without committing. These were medieval winks, saying I like you without shouting it. Travelers added spice to the mix. A merchant passing through might charm a local with tales of exotic markets, while a pilgrim could dazzle with holy relics. These flings were thrilling, but tricky strangers didn't stick around, and a tavern romance could leave you with a broken heart or a bad reputation. Nobles sometimes slunk into taverns, too, cloaked to dodge recognition. A knight might flirt with a barmaid, but it was rarely serious. Class gaps were wide, and a noble's fling could ruin a commoner's prospects. Still, the tavern's haze made anything feel possible, if only for a night. The stakes were high. A peasant courtship gone wrong could mean a family feud or a lost match. For travelers, a tavern fling could spark trouble if they returned to town. Imagine a merchant facing a jealous suitor with a pitchfork. If a couple pushed too far, like sneaking off for a rendezvous, they could face serious heat. Peasants might get fined or shamed. Nobles could lose favor or be sent to a monastery. Yet the tavern's magic kept people trying. The clink of mugs, the strum of a lute, made love feel like a gamble worth taking. Some courtships led to marriage, but it was a slog. Peasants needed family approval, and a tavern romance might be nixed for a better match with more land. Travelers faced longer odds. How do you court someone who's gone by dawn? But love found a way. Couples who met in the alehouse sometimes eloped, defying families to wed in secret. Others worked the system, using their connection to push for an approved match. Letters from the era show real devotion, with spouses recalling tavern nights as the start of their bond. Let's clear a myth. Tavern romances weren't all drunken mistakes. The alehouse was rough, but it was also where hearts connected. Those flirty moments could lead to forever if you navigated the chaos. In the next chapter, we'll explore the scandals and triumphs of these tavern tangles, from broken mugs to epic love. Stay tuned. It's gonna get wild. Story 1. Medieval Taverns and Tangles. Chapter 3. Broken Mugs and Lasting Bonds. Hey, the gang! We're wrapping up our story about medieval taverns and the romantic tangles that brewed in their smoky haze. If you missed the first 2 chapters, go catch up. We've been diving into the rowdy, flirty vibe of alehouse life. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's close this tale with the scandals, brawls, and epic love stories that came from those tavern-born sparks. It's a wild finale. So let's dive in. Taverns were where medieval hearts raced, but they were also where things could go spectacularly wrong. A flirty glance over a mug could lead to a fairy tale romance or a fist fight that left the place in shambles. The alehouse was a stage, and every move had consequences, some hilarious, some heartbreaking, all juicy. In the Middle Ages, love was never just about two people. It was about reputations, families, and survival, and tavern romances could end in broken mugs or lasting bonds. For peasants, a tavern romance was a high-stakes bet. Picture a village alehouse on a feast night. A guy and a girl hit it off, sharing a dance and a few ales. They start courting, meeting at the tavern to whisper plans. But trouble brews when her brother catches them getting too cozy. Next thing you know, mugs are flying, and the keeper's yelling for everyone to calm down. Brawls where common ale-fueled tempers flared, and a misread flirt could spark a grudge that lasted years. Villages were tight-knit, so a tavern fight wasn't just drama. It was a community soap opera, with everyone picking sides. Gossip was the real punishment. Alehouses were rumor mills, and a bold flirtation could make you the talk of the town. By morning, the whole village knew if you'd shared a mug with someone's betrothed, and the fallout could be brutal. A girl labeled loose might struggle to find a husband, while a guy could face a rival's wrath or a family's scorn. The church piled on, dragging couples to court for fornication if things went too far. Fines, public shaming, or extra penance were standard, but a quick marriage could smooth things over, turning a scandal into a shotgun wedding. Handfasting, that informal engagement, was a lifesaver, letting couples claim they were committed to dodge the worst. Travelers stirred up bigger messes. A merchant charming a local girl might leave town, only for her to face gossip or worse, a pregnancy. If he returned, he could meet a mob of angry brothers. Nobles slumming in taverns caused their own chaos. A knight flirting with a barmaid might seem fun, but if word reached his lord, he could lose favor. For the barmaid, it was riskier. A noble's fling could ruin her reputation, leaving her unmarriageable. Chroniclers loved these scandals, turning tavern tales into ballads of betrayal sung across the region. The church tried to keep a lid on things, but taverns were too wild. Priests preached against drunkenness and lust, but the clink of mugs drowned them out. Some couples played smart, framing their flirtation as honest courtship to avoid trouble. Others just rolled the dice, knowing a tavern moment was worth the sermon. The alehouse's chaos spilled drinks. Slurred songs was their shield, letting them steal kisses before anyone noticed. Not every story ended in shards. Some tavern romances triumphed. Peasants who fell in love over ale might defy their families, eloping in secret or convincing parents with sheer grit. A couple who met in the tavern could build a life, sharing harvests and hardships. Travelers, too, had their wins. A merchant might return for his alehouse sweetheart, sealing a match across miles. Letters from the era showed deep devotion, with spouses recalling tavern nights as the start of their bond. These were rare victories, but they proved love could outlast the hangover. Let's bust a myth. Taverns weren't all sin and chaos. They were rough, but they were also where hearts found home. A shared mug or a stolen dance could lead to forever, proving love thrived in the mess. That's it for Story 1. Next up, we're diving into medieval guilds and the romances that sparked in their halls. See you in the next one, Story 2, Medieval Guilds and Glances. Chapter 1, The Workshop Whispers. Hey, everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're kicking off a new story tonight, diving into the busy, crafty world of medieval guilds and the sneaky glances that sparked romance in their workshops. Picture hammers clanging, looms humming, and secret smiles traded over tools. Hit that like button if you're ready for some medieval craft drama. And subscribe for more juicy history. Drop a comment with your location and time. I love seeing our global squad. Grab a cozy spot and let's step into the guild hall together. Medieval guilds were like the unions of their day, but with more aprons and fewer picket lines. These were groups of craftsmen, blacksmiths, weavers, bakers, you name it, who banded together to protect their trade, set standards, and keep outsiders from muscling in. From village smithies to city workshops, guilds were where skills were honed, deals were struck, and, surprisingly, love found a niche. The clatter of work was the perfect cover for flirtations that bloomed among anvils and looms. Let's paint the scene. A guild workshop was a hive of activity. Take a weaver's guild. Looms lined the walls, threads tangled in colorful heaps, and the air buzzed with the rhythmic clack of shuttles. Or a blacksmith's forge. Hammers rang on glowing iron, sparks flew, and sweat dripped. Light streamed through narrow windows, mixing with torchlight to cast shadows on stone or timber walls. The guild hall itself was fancier, with carved benches and banners boasting the guild's crest. It was a place of pride, but also pressure. Every apprentice and journeyman was vying to prove their worth. The guild was a tight-knit world. Masters ran the show, training apprentices who lived and worked under their roof. Journeymen, skilled but not yet masters, hustled for jobs. Women were involved. 2 wives and daughters often worked alongside men, especially in trades like brewing or weaving. Everyone knew each other, which made flirting tricky but thrilling. A young apprentice might catch the eye of a master's daughter, or a journeyman could trade smiles with a baker's widow. Guilds were like small villages, and every glance was noticed. Romance in the guild was a slow burn. Workshops were busy, and flirting had to fit between tasks. A weaver's apprentice might accidentally brush hands with a girl while passing a shuttle. A blacksmith could offer to sharpen a seamstress's shears, flexing his skills to impress. These were subtle moves, because guilds were strict about behavior. Masters watched their workers like hawks, and a bold flirt could earn a reprimand or a boot. But the work's rhythm hammer strikes. Loom clacks gave cover for whispered words or sly looks. The church had its say. As always, guilds were supposed to be about craft and charity, not courtship. Many had ties to local churches, sponsoring altars or feasts, and priests preached against idle fancies that distracted from work. Some guilds even had rules against apprentices marrying, to keep them focused, but love didn't care about sermons. Couples used guild events feasts, fairs, or processions to flirt more openly, dodging the church's glare in the crowd's buzz. Flirting had its own guild code. Offering to help with a task like carrying a basket of wool was a classic move. A girl might weave a small token, like a ribbon, for her crush. A guy could carve a tool handle, showing off his craft. These were practical gestures, but loaded with meaning. Guilds were competitive, and a flirtation could spark jealousy among rivals. A misplaced smile could lead to a cold shoulder or a workshop spat. So couples had to be careful. Guilds weren't just for locals. Journeymen traveled between towns, bringing fresh faces and flirty potential. A new weaver might charm a local with tales of distant cities, while a visiting baker could dazzle with exotic recipes. These flings were exciting, but risky journeymen often left, and a guild romance could end in heartbreak or gossip. Still, the workshop's hum was a magnet for love, drawing people back for one more glance. Let's bust a myth. Guilds weren't all work and no play. They were serious, but they were also where hearts sparked. The clink of tools and the hum of craft were the soundtrack to medieval romance. In the next chapter, we'll dig into how these workshop glances turned into courtships and the risks they faced. Stay tuned. It's gonna get crafty. Story 2, Medieval Guilds and Glances. Chapter 2, Crafted Courtships. Hey, friends! We're back for Chapter 2 of our story about medieval guilds and the romantic glances that sparked in their workshops. If you missed Chapter 1, go check it out. We set the scene with the busy, crafty vibe of guild life. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Let's dive into how those workshop flirtations turned into serious courtships, and the tightrope couples walked to make love last in a world of tools, trades, and tradition. Guilds were medieval matchmaking hubs, where a shared task could ignite a romance. But turning a workshop glance into a courtship was like threading a needle in a storm. In the Middle Ages, love was tangled up with craft, community, and survival, and guild-born sparks had to navigate a web of rules and rivalries. Whether you were an apprentice dreaming of a master's daughter or a journeyman eyeing a weaver, the workshop was where love started. But keeping it alive took skill, patience, and a steady hand. For apprentices, a guild romance was a bold move. Picture a blacksmith's forge. A young apprentice and the master's daughter hit it off, trading smiles while hammering iron. They start finding excuses to work together, passing tools, sweeping the floor side by side. That's the spark. But courtship meant playing the long game. The apprentice might offer to repair her spinning wheel, showing off his craft to win her family's favor. She could slip him a woven band, a subtle sign she's interested. These were cautious steps, because guilds were like families. Every move was watched, and a misstep could cost you your job. The guild's rules were strict. Masters wanted their workers focused, not mooning over each other. Some banned apprentices from courting, fearing it would distract from training. A bold flirt could earn a scolding or extra chores. And if the master's daughter was involved, You'd better have his blessing. Rivalries added heat. Other apprentices might sabotage a romance out of jealousy, spreading gossip or picking fights. The workshop was a pressure cooker, and love had to simmer quietly to avoid boiling over. The church was another hurdle. Guilds had strong ties to religion, often funding chapels or saints' feasts, and priests preached against vain loves that disrupted work. Flirting was fine if it looked honest, like helping with a task, but anything too obvious could land you in trouble. Some guilds had moral overseers, older members who'd report misbehavior to the church. Penalties ranged from a lecture to a fine, or even expulsion if you pushed it. But workshops were busy, and clever couples used the clatter of tools to cover whispered words or stolen glances. Gossip was a guild's lifeblood. Workshops were like social networks. One wrong move, and everyone knew a girl seen lingering with an apprentice might be called frivolous, hurting her marriage prospects. A guy who flirted with the wrong person could spark a rival's wrath, maybe even a workshop brawl. To avoid drama, couples used coded signals, a dropped tool, a woven token, or a shared task. These were medieval emojis, saying, "I'm into you," without shouting it. Journeymen brought fresh sparks. These skilled workers moved between towns, adding flirty potential. A new baker might charm a weaver with tales of city markets, while a visiting smith could dazzle with a polished blade. These flings were thrilling, but risky journeymen often left, and a guild romance could end in heartbreak or gossip. Women in the guild, like brewers or seamstresses, had their own game. A widow running a shop might flirt with a journeyman, testing his skills and heart. These connections were rare but electric, shaking up the guild's routine. The stakes were high. An apprentice's courtship gone wrong could mean a lost job or a family feud. For journeymen, a guild fling could spark trouble if they returned. Imagine facing a master's glare for charming his niece. If a couple pushed too far, like sneaking off during a guild feast, they could face serious consequences. Apprentices might be sacked. Women could lose their standing. Yet the workshop's hum kept people trying. The clang of hammers, the whir of looms, made love feel like a craft worth mastering. Some courtships led to marriage, but it was a grind. Apprentices needed the master's approval, and a guild romance might be vetoed for a better match with more status. Journeymen faced tougher odds. How do you court someone when you're always moving? But love found a way. Couples who met in the workshop sometimes eloped, defying guilds to wed in secret. Others worked the system, using their skills to prove their worth. Guild records show real devotion, with spouses recalling workshop moments as the start of their bond. Let's clear a myth. Guild romances weren't all doomed. Workshops were strict, but they were also where hearts connected. Those stolen glances could lead to forever if you crafted them right. In the next chapter, we'll explore the scandals and triumphs of these guild loves, from broken tools to epic vows. Stay tuned. It's gonna be a masterpiece. Story 2, Medieval Guilds and Glances. Chapter 3, Tools Down, Hearts Up. Hey, gang! We're wrapping up our story about medieval guilds and the romantic glances that sparked in their workshops. If you missed the first 2 chapters, go catch up. We've been diving into the crafty, flirty vibe of guild life. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's close this tale with the scandals, rivalries, and epic love stories that came from those workshop sparks. It's a heartfelt finale, so let's get to work. Guilds were where medieval hearts hammered, but they were also where love could forge a masterpiece or shatter like brittle iron. A shared glance over a loom could lead to a lifetime bond or a scandal that shook the workshop. The guild was a forge of emotions, testing skill, loyalty, and desire. Whether you were an apprentice chasing a dream or a journeyman seeking a spark, the love you found in the clatter of tools could change everything. For better or worse. For apprentices, a guild romance was a risky craft. Imagine a weaver's workshop. A young apprentice and a master's daughter fall for each other, trading smiles while threading looms. They start courting, sneaking chats during breaks or guild feasts. But trouble looms when a rival apprentice, jealous of their bond, spreads gossip. Suddenly, the workshop's buzzing and the master's glaring. Rivalries were fierce. Other workers might sabotage a romance, hiding tools or starting fights. A guild spat could cost you your apprenticeship, turning love into a high-stakes gamble. Scandals were a guild's dark side. Workshops were gossip hubs, and a bold flirtation could ignite drama. A couple caught whispering too long might face the master's wrath, with extra chores or a public scolding. If things went further, like a secret rendezvous, the church got involved. Guilds had ties to religion, and priests dragged couples to court for unchaste acts. Fines, shaming, or even expulsion were on the table, especially if a pregnancy resulted. Handfasting, that informal engagement, could save face. But it wasn't always enough to dodge the gossip. Journeymen stirred up bigger messes. A traveling smith charming a local weaver might leave town, only for her to face whispers or worse. A child, if he returned, he could meet a guild's cold shoulder or a master's fist. Women in the guild, like brewers or widows, faced their own risks. A seamstress flirting with a journeyman might seem bold, but if word spread, her reputation could unravel. Chroniclers loved these tales, turning guild scandals into ballads of betrayal sung at fairs. The church tried to keep things pure, but guilds were too lively. Priests preached against lust and pride, but the clang of tools drowned them out. Some couples played smart, framing their flirtation as honest work to avoid trouble. Others just swung the hammer, knowing a workshop moment was worth the sermon. The guild's chaos, sparks flying, looms clacking was their shield, letting them steal vows before anyone noticed. Not every story ended in sparks. Some guild romances triumphed. Apprentices who fell in love over an anvil might elope, defying masters to wed in secret. Others proved their worth, using their craft to win approval. A weaver and a baker who met in the guild could build a life, sharing looms and ovens through hard times. Journeymen, too, had their wins. A smith might settle for his workshop sweetheart, sealing a match across towns. Guild records show deep devotion, with spouses recalling workshop glances as the start of their bond. These were rare victories, but they proved love could outshine the forge. Let's bust a myth. Guilds weren't all toil and tradition. They were strict, but they were also where hearts found fire. A shared tool or a stolen glance could lead to forever. Proving love was the ultimate craft. That's it for story 2. Next up, we're diving into medieval fairs and the romances that bloomed in their chaos. See you in the next one. Story 3, Medieval Fairs and Flirtations. Chapter 1, The Fairground Frenzy. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. We're starting a new story tonight, diving into the vibrant, chaotic world of medieval fairs and the flirtations that sparked in their colorful chaos. Picture jugglers tossing torches, merchants shouting, and secret glances over spiced wine. Hit that like button if you're ready for some medieval fair magic. And subscribe for more epic history. Drop a comment with your location and time. I love our global crew. Grab a cozy spot and let's wander through the fairground together. Medieval fairs were like Coachella meets a flea market, part trade hub, part party, part circus. These weren't just local markets. They were massive events where towns and villages came alive with merchants, minstrels, and mischief. From county fairs to international trade expos, fairs were where people shopped, gawked, and, yes, fell in love. The roar of the crowd and the glitter of goods made fairs a niche for romance, where a quick smile could start a story that lasted a lifetime or a day. Let's set the scene. A fairground was a riot of color and sound. Stalls sprawled across muddy fields or town squares, piled with silks, spices, and shiny trinkets. Vendors hollered about miracle cures or fresh pies, while pigs and kids darted underfoot. Jugglers, acrobats, and bear-baiters drew crowds, and minstrels strummed bawdy tunes. Tents and banners fluttered, some tattered from years of use. Torchlight or sunlight lit the chaos. Depending on the hour, and the air smelled of roast meat, sweat, and straw. It was a sensory overload, perfect for sneaking a flirty moment. Fairs drew everyone, peasants saving for a ribbon, merchants flashing coin, nobles hunting for falcons or gossip. For young folks, fairs were a rare chance to break free. Back home, life was work or family drama. But at a fair, you could mingle with strangers or that cute villager you'd been eyeing. A peasant girl might linger by a cloth stall, pretending to haggle while smiling at a tanner's son. A guy could offer to win a trinket at a game, flexing his aim to impress. These were bold moves in a world where most meetings were planned by parents. The church, as usual, had opinions. Fairs were supposed to boost trade and community, not spark sin. They worried about drunkenness and lewd behavior, and priests often patrolled, eyeing couples who stood too close. Public flirting, like sharing a dance or a kiss, could earn a sermon or a fine. Some fairs had moral stewards to keep things holy, but the crowd's chaos made it hard to enforce. Couples used the bustle to their advantage, slipping behind a tent or blending into a juggler's audience for a quick chat. Flirting had its fairground flair. Offering a spiced bun or a shiny bead was a classic move, small but sweet. A girl might accidentally drop her kerchief, giving her crush a chance to play hero. A guy could boast about his trade, hoping to dazzle with talk of a fine leather belt or a fat goose. These were subtle but risky, because fairs were gossip central. A misplaced glance could spread faster than a bard's tune, and you had to watch out for jealous rivals or nosy kin. Nobles got in on the fun, too. They'd sweep through fairs with entourages, buying luxuries or showing off. A lord's daughter might exchange a smile with a knight, while her chaperone haggled over velvet. A young noble could offer a lady a gilded cup, testing the waters for a match. These sparks were high-stakes. Noble courtship was usually arranged, and a fair fling could mess up plans. But the fair's dazzle was irresistible, even for the elite. Let's bust a myth. Fairs weren't just about trade. They were wild, messy, and full of heart. The clatter of coins and the strum of lutes were the soundtrack to medieval romance. In the next chapter, we'll dig into how these fairground flirtations turned into courtships and the risks they faced. Stay tuned. It's gonna get lively. Story 3, Medieval Fairs and Flirtations. Chapter 2, Sparks in the Stalls. Hey, friends! We're back for Chapter 2 of our story about medieval fairs and the flirtations that sparked in their chaotic stalls. If you missed Chapter 1, go check it out. We set the scene with the vibrant, noisy vibe of fairground life. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Let's dive into how those fair flirtations turned into serious courtships, and the tightrope couples walked to make love last in a world of trinkets, tunes, and tradition. Fairs were medieval speed dating, where a shared bun could ignite a romance. But turning a fairground spark into a courtship was like juggling torches exciting. But you could get burned. In the Middle Ages, love was tangled with family, faith, and survival, and fairborn romances had to dodge a maze of rules and rumors. Whether you were a peasant chasing a sweetheart or a noble eyeing a knight, the fair was where dreams started. But keeping them alive took wit, charm, and a steady step. For peasants, a fair flirtation was a rare shot at love. Picture a county fair. A girl and a guy hit it off, sharing a laugh over a juggler's tricks. They start hanging out, strolling past stalls or dancing to a minstrel's tune. That's the spark. But courtship meant planning. Back home, their families might have other matches in mind, and a fair romance could stir trouble. The guy might offer a carved bead, showing he's serious. The girl could slip him a spiced bun, a sweet sign she's interested. These were slow moves, because rushing could spark gossip or a parental veto. The church was always watching. Fairs were supposed to be about trade and fellowship, not flirty shenanigans. Priests preached against vain dalliances, and bigger fairs had moral stewards sniffing out sin. A couple dancing too close might face a lecture or a fine. Some fairs even had curfews to clear out rowdy lovers. But the fair's chaos was a shield. Clever couples used the crowd to cover whispered words or stolen glances, dodging the church's glare in the bustle of tents and tunes. Gossip was a fair's dark side. Fairs were like live gossip feeds. One wrong move, and everyone knew. A girl seen sharing a trinket with a guy might be labeled loose, hurting her marriage prospects. A guy who flirted with the wrong person could spark a rival's wrath, maybe even a scuffle by the pie stall. To avoid drama, couples used coded signals, a dropped ribbon, a shared song, or a lost kerchief. These were medieval winks, saying, "I'm into you," without shouting it. Nobles played a flashier game. Fairs gave them a chance to mingle outside the castle. But their flirtations were loaded with politics. A knight might buy a lady a silk scarf, a bold move that could hint at courtship or offend her betrothed. A noblewoman could accept a gilded cup, testing the waters for a match. These sparks were risky. Noble marriages were usually arranged, and a fair fling could derail plans. Chaperones were relentless, watching every move. Still, the fair's dazzle gave nobles cover, letting them frame their flirtation as courtly love while sparking real feelings. The stakes were high. A peasant courtship gone wrong could mean a broken heart or a family feud. For nobles, a fair romance could disrupt alliances or spark scandals. If a couple pushed too far, like sneaking off to a tent, they could face serious trouble. Peasants might get fined or shamed. Nobles could lose status or be sent to a convent. Yet the fair's magic kept people trying. The jingle of coins, the flash of silks, made love feel like a prize worth chasing. Some courtships led to marriage, but it was a hustle. Peasants needed family approval, and a fair romance might be nixed for a better match with more land. Nobles faced tougher odds, with marriages often sealed before the fair. But love found a way. Couples who met at a fair sometimes eloped, defying families to wed in secret. Others worked the system, using their connection to push for an approved match. Chronicles show real devotion, with spouses recalling fair moments as the start of their bond. Let's clear a myth. Fair romances weren't all fleeting. Fairs were wild, but they were also where hearts connected. Those stolen glances could lead to forever. If you navigated the chaos, in the next chapter, we'll explore the scandals and triumphs of these fair loves. From broken trinkets to epic vows. Stay tuned. It's gonna be a showstopper. Story 3. Medieval Fairs and Flirtations. Chapter 3. Trinkets and Triumphs. Hey, King! We're wrapping up our story about medieval fairs and the flirtations that sparked in their chaotic stalls. If you missed the first 2 chapters, go catch up. We've been diving into the vibrant, flirty vibe of fairground life. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's close this tale with the scandals, heartbreaks, and epic love stories that came from those fair-born sparks. It's a dazzling finale. So let's dive in. Fairs were where medieval hearts danced, but they were also where love could shine or shatter. A shared trinket could lead to a lifetime vow or a scandal that echoed through the village. The fairground was a stage, testing charm, courage, and desire. Whether you were a peasant chasing a dream or a noble seeking a spark, the love you found in the crowd could change everything. For better or worse, for peasants A fair romance was a wild ride. Picture a town fair. A girl and a guy fall for each other, sharing a dance by a minstrel's stall. They start courting, meeting at fairs to trade gifts and whispers. But trouble hits when her family pushes a richer suitor, or his rival spreads gossip about their fling. Suddenly, the fair's buzz turns sour, and they're dodging glares or brawls. Heartbreak was real in a small village. A lost love was a public wound. And you'd see your ex at every fair, making it sting more. Some gave up, but others fought, sneaking notes or vowing to win their love back. Scandals were a fair's dark side. Fairs were gossip factories, and a bold flirtation could ignite drama. A couple caught kissing behind a tent might face a priest's wrath, with fines or shaming waiting at home. If a pregnancy resulted, the stakes skyrocketed. The church might push for marriage, but families could refuse, leaving the couple ostracized. Hand-fasting helped, letting them claim an engagement. But it wasn't always enough. Gossip could ruin a reputation, making it hard to find a match later. Nobles faced bigger dramas. A fair romance could upend political plans. Imagine a knight buying a lady a gilded cup at a trade fair. Her betrothed, a rival lord, sees it as an insult, sparking a feud or duel. Noble women faced harsher judgment. A flirt gone wrong could land them in a convent or ruin their family's honor. Chroniclers loved these tales, turning fair scandals into ballads of betrayal sung at feasts. The church piled on, calling out sinful loves and pushing nobles to atone with donations. Yet the fair's dazzle gave couples cover, letting them claim their bond was courtly while chasing passion. The church tried to keep things holy, but fairs were too wild. Priests preached against lust and pride, but the jingle of coins drowned them out. Some couples played smart, framing their flirtation as honest courtship to avoid trouble. Others just rolled the dice, knowing a fair moment was worth the sermon. The fair's chaos jugglers, crowds, tunes was their shield, letting them steal vows before anyone noticed. Not every story ended in tears. Some fair romances triumphed. Peasants who fell in love at a stall might elope, defying families to wed in secret. Others convinced parents, using their shared spark as proof of their bond. Nobles, too, had their wins. A fair spark could charm a family into approving a match, blending love with politics. Chronicles show deep devotion, with spouses recalling fair moments as the start of their life together. These were rare victories, but they proved love could outshine the fair's glitter. Let's bust a myth. Fair romances weren't all doomed. Fairs were chaotic, but they were also where hearts found home. A shared bun or a stolen dance could lead to forever, proving love thrived in the mess. That's it for Story 3. Next up, we're diving into medieval castles and the romances that bloomed in their halls. See you in the next one. Story 4, Medieval Castles and Crushes. Chapter 1, Love in the Keep. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. We're kicking off a new story tonight, diving into the grand, shadowy world of medieval castles and the crushes that sparked in their stone halls. Picture knights in armor, ladies in velvet, and secret glances over candlelit feasts. Hit that like button if you're ready for some medieval castle drama. And subscribe for more epic history. Drop a comment with your location and time. I love our global squad. Grab a seat and let's storm the castle together. Medieval castles were more than fortresses. They were the heart of noble life, where power, politics, and passion collided. These weren't just stone walls. They were bustling hubs of lords, ladies, knights, and servants, all navigating a world of duty and desire, from towering keeps to sprawling manors. Castles were where alliances were forged, wars were planned, and, surprisingly, love found a niche. The clink of goblets and the rustle of silk made castles a stage for romance, where a single glance could start a legend. Let's set the scene. A castle was a maze of stone and timber, great halls with soaring beams, spiral stairs leading to turrets, and chambers lit by flickering torches. The keep was the heart, where the lord held court, feasted, and schemed. Kitchens churned out roasts, stables buzzed with horses, and courtyards rang with sword practice. Tapestries hung on damp walls, their threads faded from years of smoke. The air smelled of wax, sweat, and straw, and every corner held a secret. It was grand, gritty, and perfect for a crush to bloom. Castles were noble domains, but they were packed with people. Lords and ladies ruled, surrounded by knights, squires, and maids. Servants scurried, from cooks to grooms, while minstrels and priests added flavor. For young folks, castles were a pressure cooker of emotions. A squire might catch the eye of a lady's maid, or a knight could fall for the lord's niece. These crushes were thrilling but tricky class. Duty and watchful eyes made every flirt a risk. The castle's bustle was a cover, letting love spark in the shadows. Romance in the castle was a high-stakes game. The great hall was prime flirting ground, where feasts and dances let nobles mingle. A knight might offer a lady a choice morsel at dinner, a bold move under her father's nose. A lady could drop her glove, giving her suitor a chance to play hero. These were subtle gestures, because castles were gossip hubs. Servants saw everything, and a misplaced smile could reach the lord's ears. The constant hum of activity, clanging swords, chanted prayers gave cover for whispered words or sly looks. The church had a lot to say. Castles had chapels, and priests were fixtures, preaching against carnal desires that distracted from duty. They wanted love to serve God and family, not personal whims. Public flirting, like a knight dedicating a song to a lady, could earn a sermon or a fine. Some lords enforced strict rules, keeping maids and squires apart. But the castle's chaos made enforcement tough. Couples used feasts or courtyard strolls to flirt, dodging the church's glare in the crowd's buzz. Flirting had its castle code. Offering to carry a lady's prayer book was a classic move, chivalrous. But flirty, a lady might weave a ribbon for a knight, a token of favor. A squire could polish a knight's armor, hoping to impress his crush. These were practical but loaded, because castles were political. A flirtation could spark jealousy among rivals or anger a lord with marriage plans. A misplaced glance could lead to a duel or a banishment. So couples had to be careful. Servants had their own game. Maids and grooms flirted in kitchens or stables. Away from noble eyes, a cook might share a suite with a laundress, or a groom could offer a maid a ride on a horse. These were small moments, but in a world of servitude, they were magic. Nobles sometimes crossed lines. Too, a lord's son might flirt with a maid, but it was rarely serious. Class gaps were wide, and a servant's crush could end in heartbreak or worse. Let's bust a myth. Castles weren't all cold and grim. They were grand, but they were also where hearts sparked. The clink of armor and the rustle of gowns were the soundtrack to medieval romance. In the next chapter, we'll dig into how these castle crushes turned into courtships and the risks they faced. Stay tuned. It's gonna be royal. Story 4, Medieval Castles and Crushes. Chapter 2, Courtship in the Courtyard. Hey, friends, we're back for Chapter 2 of our story about medieval castles and the crushes that sparked in their stone halls. If you missed Chapter 1, go check it out. We set the scene with the grand, gritty vibe of castle life. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Let's dive into how those castle crushes turned into serious courtships, and the tightrope couples walked to make love last in a world of armor, alliances, and watchful priests. Castles were medieval soap operas, where a dropped glove could ignite a romance. But turning a castle crush into a courtship was like navigating a moat full of crocodiles. Thrilling, but you could sink fast. In the Middle Ages, love was tangled with duty, politics, and survival, and castle-born sparks had to dodge a maze of rules and rivalries. Whether you were a knight chasing a lady or a maid eyeing a squire, the keep was where dreams started. But keeping them alive took charm, cunning, and a steady sword. For nobles, a castle crush was a high-stakes quest. Picture a great hall feast. A knight and a lady hit it off, sharing smiles over a roast swan. They start courting, exchanging glances during sword practice or passing notes through a maid. That's the spark. But courtship meant playing the long game. The knight might dedicate a hunt to her, offering a falcon's feather as a token. The lady could slip him a prayer book, a subtle sign she's interested. These were cautious moves, because castles were political hotbeds. Every flirt was watched, and a misstep could anger a lord or ruin a betrothal. The church was a constant shadow. Castles had chapels, and priests were ever present, preaching against worldly loves that defied God's plan. Flirting was fine if it looked chivalrous, like offering a lady a seat. But anything too bold could spark trouble. A couple caught whispering in the courtyard might face a sermon or a fine. Some lords had moral stewards, priests or kin who'd report misbehavior. But castles were chaotic, and clever couples used the bustle feasts, hunts, prayers to cover whispered vows or stolen glances. Gossip was a castle's lifeblood. Servants saw everything, and a flirtation could reach the lord's ears faster than a hawk's flight. A lady seen lingering with a knight might be called forward, hurting her marriage prospects. A knight who flirted with the wrong lady could face a rival's challenge, maybe even a duel. To avoid drama, couples used coded signals, a dropped scarf, a dedicated song, or a shared prayer. These were medieval subtweets, saying, "I'm into you," without shouting it. Servants had their own game. In kitchens or stables, maids and grooms flirted away from noble eyes. A cook might share a sweet with a laundress, or a groom could help a maid carry water, sparking a smile. These were small but risky masters frowned on servant romances, fearing it would distract from work. A bold flirt could earn extra chores or a sacking. Rivalries added heat. Other servants might sabotage a crush out of jealousy, spreading gossip or hiding tools. The castle's lower halls were a quiet battleground for love. Nobles sometimes crossed lines. A lord's son might flirt with a maid, but it was rarely serious. Class gaps were chasms, and a servant's crush could end in heartbreak or banishment. Knights and ladies played a flashier game, using courtly love to flirt honorably. A knight might vow to serve a lady, writing poems or wearing her sleeve. These were public but coded, letting couples test the waters without committing. The castle's grandeur tapestries, candelabras made every gesture feel epic. The stakes were huge. A noble courtship gone wrong could mean a broken alliance or a lost title. For servants, a castle romance could cost their job or reputation. If a couple pushed too far, like sneaking off to a turret, they could face serious trouble. Nobles might be exiled, servants could be whipped or cast out. Yet the castle's magic kept people trying. The clank of armor, the rustle of silk, made love feel like a quest worth fighting for. Some courtships led to marriage, but it was a siege. Nobles needed family approval, and a castle crush might be vetoed for a better match. Servants faced tougher odds. How do you wed when you're bound to serve? But love found a way. Couples who met in the keep sometimes eloped, defying lords to wed in secret. Others worked the system, using their charm to win approval. Chronicles show real devotion, with spouses recalling castle moments as the start of their bond. Let's clear a myth. Castle romances weren't all doomed. The keep was grand, but it was also where hearts connected. Those stolen glances could lead to forever if you navigated the risks. In the next chapter, we'll explore the scandals and triumphs of these castle loves, from broken swords to epic vows. Stay tuned, it's gonna be legendary. Story 4, Medieval Castles and Crushes. Chapter 3, Swords, Scandals, and Sworn Vows. Hey, gang, we're wrapping up our story about medieval castles and the crushes that sparked in their stone halls. If you missed the first 2 chapters, go catch up. We've been diving into the grand, flirty vibe of castle life. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's close this tale with the scandals, heartbreak, and epic love stories that came from those castle-born sparks. It's a royal finale. So let's storm in. Castles were where medieval hearts clashed, but they were also where love could forge a legend or crumble like old stone. A shared glance in the Great Hall could lead to a sworn vow or a scandal that shook the court. The keep was a crucible, testing honor, desire, and courage. Whether you were a knight chasing a lady or a servant seeking a spark, the love you found in the castle could change everything, for better or worse. For nobles, a castle crush was a perilous quest. Imagine a torchlit feast. A knight and a lady fall for each other, trading smiles over a silver goblet. They start courting, passing notes during hunts, or whispering in the chapel. But trouble brews when her betrothed, a rival lord, catches wind. Suddenly, the castle's buzzing, and swords are drawn. Rivalries were fierce. Other knights might challenge a romance, sparking duels or feuds. A castle spat could cost a title or a life, turning love into a deadly game. Scandals were a castle's dark side. The keep was a gossip hive, and a bold flirtation could ignite drama. A couple caught in a turret might face the Lord's wrath, with banishment or a convent looming. If a pregnancy resulted, the stakes skyrocketed. The church might push for marriage, but families could refuse, leaving the couple shunned. Hand fasting helped, letting them claim an engagement. But it wasn't always enough. Gossip could ruin a reputation, making it hard to find a match later. Servants faced their own dramas. A maid and a groom falling in love in the stables might seem sweet. But if the steward caught them, they could lose their jobs. Masters frowned on servant romances, fearing it would slacken work. A bold flirt could earn a whipping or a sacking. Rivalries added heat. Other servants might sabotage a crush, spreading gossip or hiding chores. The castle's lower halls were a quiet battlefield, where love fought to survive. Nobles sometimes crossed lines. A lord's son charming a maid could spark a scandal, ruining her prospects or landing her in exile. Chroniclers loved these tales, turning castle flings into ballads of betrayal sung at feasts. The church piled on, calling out sinful loves and pushing nobles to atone with donations. Yet the castle's grandeur gave couples cover, letting them frame their bond as courtly love while chasing passion. The church tried to keep things holy, but castles were too wild. Priests preached against lust and pride, but the clink of goblets drowned them out. Some couples played smart, framing their flirtation as chivalrous duty to avoid trouble. Others just swung the sword, knowing a castle moment was worth the sermon. The keep's chaos, feasts, hunts, prayers was their shield, letting them steal vows before anyone noticed. Not every story ended in shards. Some castle romances triumphed. Knights who fell in love in the hall might elope, defying lords to wed in secret. Others proved their worth, using their valor to win approval. Servants, too, had their wins. A maid and a groom might marry in the chapel, building a life in the castle's shadow. Chronicles show deep devotion, with spouses recalling castle moments as the start of their life together. These were rare victories, but they proved love could outshine the keep's stones. Let's bust a myth. Castle romances weren't all doomed. The keep was grand, but it was also where hearts found fire. A shared goblet or a stolen dance could lead to forever, proving love thrived in the clash. That's it for Story 4 and our series. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride through medieval romance. Let me know in the comments what you thought and what topic you want next. Until then, stay bold, and I'll see you in the next one.